You are walking down the aisle of your local big box sporting goods store, and for the first time in years, the view is comforting. The shelves that were barren wastelands in 2021 are now groaning under the weight of brass and lead. The green and white boxes of Remington are stacked high. The Federal American Eagle is piled in pyramids. The Winchester White Box is plentiful. To the casual observer, the American ammunition industry looks healthy. It looks recovered. It looks like the good old days are back. But you are looking at a mirage. What you are seeing on those shelves is not the sign of a healthy industry. It is the bloating of a corpse. Behind the scenes, the titans of American ammunition, the companies that have armed our military, our police, and our citizens for over a century, are bleeding out. They are fracturing, selling off assets, and surrendering their sovereignty to foreign conglomerates and government contracts just to keep the lights on. The abundance you see is actually a symptom of a catastrophic miscalculation of the market, a supply chain bullwhip that is snapped back with lethal force, and a corporate restructuring that is about to change who owns the very bullets in your magazine. Welcome back to Gun and Gavel. I am your host, and today we are not investigating a crime scene with yellow tape. We are investigating the crime scene of the boardroom. We are conducting a forensic audit of the American ammunition industry to understand why the biggest names in the business are collapsing into pieces, why foreign powers are buying up our domestic production capacity, and what this means for the future of the Second Amendment. If you think the ammo shortage was bad, wait until you see the ammo sell-off. Before we dissect the financials and the fallout, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We are diving into the complex intersection of economics, law, and ballistics, and you need to be in the loop. This is the intelligence briefing that the industry doesn't want you to hear. Now, let's peel back the curtain on the great ammunition collapse of 2025. To understand the rot at the center of the industry, we have to look back at the sugar high that poisoned it. From 2020 to 2022, the ammunition market experienced an injection of capital and demand that was unprecedented in human history. A global pandemic, civil unrest, a contentious election, and the raw fear of societal collapse drove millions of Americans to buy their first gun, and tens of millions more to hoard ammunition. Vista Outdoor, the parent company of Federal, CCI, Speer, and Remington, saw sales jump nearly 27% in a single fiscal year. Gross profits exploded by over 70%. It was a gold rush. In response, these companies did what corporations always do when the money is flowing. They got fat. They expanded production lines. They hired thousands of workers. They leveraged their balance sheets to acquire competitors, and they built their entire business model around the idea that the panic would never end. They bet the farm on the idea that Americans would continue to buy 9mm at 60 cents a round forever. But the laws of economics are as immutable as the laws of physics. What goes up must come down, and when the crash came in late 2023 and throughout 2024, it was brutal. The normalization of the market didn't just mean people stopped buying. It meant that the supply chain, which had been ramped up to maximum velocity, slammed into a wall of consumer apathy. Background checks cooled. The fear tax evaporated. Shooters looked at their stockpiles and decided they had enough, but the factories were still churning. The overhead costs, the salaries, the electricity, the raw materials bought at peak prices were still on the books. This created a toxic financial situation known as negative operating leverage. When you are built for speed, slowing down is expensive. The inventory started to pile up in warehouses, sitting there like dead weight, tying up cash that these companies desperately needed to pay down their debts. This financial hemorrhage led to the most significant event in the modern history of the American gun industry, the fracture of Vista Outdoor. For decades, Vista was the undisputed king of the hill, a monolith that controlled the vast majority of domestic primer and ammunition production. But the pressure from shareholders to unlock value and stop the bleeding forced a radical decision: tear the company apart. The board decided to split the company into two separate entities. The outdoor gear and apparel side was spun off into a company called Revelist, destined to be taken private by equity firms. But the gun side, the ammunition business, was packaged into a new entity called the Kinetic Group. And here is where the gavel drops. They didn't just spin it off, they sold it. The Kinetic Group, comprising the heritage brands of Federal, CCI, Speer, and Remington, was sold to the Czechoslovak Group, or CSG. Let that sink in for a moment. The factories that produce the ammunition for the FBI, the local police, and millions of American citizens are now effectively under the control of a foreign defense conglomerate. This deal, valued at over $2 billion, had to clear a massive hurdle: the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS. This is the federal watchdog that ensures foreign ownership of critical infrastructure doesn't threaten national security. The fact that this deal was approved tells you everything you need to know about the state of the industry. The regulators looked at the books, looked at the market, and decided that selling our domestic production capacity to a NATO ally was better than letting these companies collapse under their own weight. This is not a victory lap for global trade. This is a distress signal. It means that the American model of publicly traded ammunition companies is failing. The quarterly earnings pressure of the New York Stock Exchange is incompatible with the cyclical, boom and bust nature of the gun business. CSG, being a private foreign entity, can weather the storms better, but it means the sovereignty of American ammunition is now managed from Prague, not Minnesota. The story of Remington Ammunition is the most tragic chapter in this saga, and it serves as the perfect case study for the industry's volatility. Remington is the oldest name in the game, a brand that is synonymous with American firepower. But in 2020, it went through a humiliating bankruptcy fire sale. The company was chopped up like a stolen car. The firearms division went one way, the brand name went another, and the ammunition factory in Lenoke, Arkansas, was snatched up by Vista Outdoor. For a moment, it looked like a renaissance. Vista pumped money into Lenoke, rehired the workers, and got the lines running again. But the scars of bankruptcy run deep. When you walk through a factory that has died twice in a decade, the ghost of failure hangs in the air. Now, with the CSG acquisition, Remington is once again changing hands. It is a brand without a home, a production line that is being traded like a poker chip. The green box you see on the shelf is being made, but the corporate structure behind it is a labyrinth of debt and foreign equity. While Vista and Remington are being sold off to Europe, Winchester is taking a different, perhaps darker, path to survival. Owned by the Olin Corporation, Winchester looked at the civilian market crash and decided to pivot hard toward the one customer who never runs out of money: the United States government. Winchester secured the operating contract for the Lake City Army Ammunition Plant, the single largest producer of small arms ammunition in the world. This is the facility that churns out 5.56 and 7.62 for the military. But Winchester didn't stop there. They are fully integrating themselves into the Army's next-generation squad weapon program, the 6.8mm Fury. In 2025, they broke ground on a massive 450,000 square foot facility dedicated to this new caliber. From a business perspective, this is brilliant. Government contracts are long-term, stable, and immune to the whims of the consumer market. But from a gun and gavel perspective, it raises a troubling question. Is Winchester still a civilian ammo company, or are they becoming a defense contractor that sells its leftovers to the public? When you look at their earnings calls, the story is clear. The commercial side, the ammo you buy for your deer rifle or your carry pistol, is reporting softer pricing and profit pressure. The growth, the excitement, and the capital investment are all on the military side. This means that in a future shortage or a future geopolitical conflict, Winchester's priority will be the Pentagon, not the shelves of your local gun store. We are seeing a bifurcation of the industry. One side owned by foreign interests, the other side owned by the military-industrial complex. The independent American ammo maker is becoming an endangered species. This vacuum at the top has created an opening for a new kind of predator in the market: the import giants and the vertically integrated disruptors. If the legacy American brands are the dinosaurs struggling to adapt to the climate change of the post-pandemic world, companies like Fiocchi and Palmetto State Armory are the mammals eating their eggs. Fiocchi, an Italian powerhouse, didn't just ship more ammo to the US. They planted a flag here. They recognized that the biggest bottleneck in the American supply chain was primers. While Vista and Winchester controlled the domestic primer supply and used it as a choke point, Fiocchi built a massive primer manufacturing facility in Little Rock, Arkansas. This was a strategic masterstroke. By controlling their own ignition source on American soil, they bypassed the gatekeepers. They can now produce ammunition without begging the competition for components. This is why you are seeing Fiocchi boxes everywhere, often at prices that undercut the domestic giants. They are leaner, faster, and they control their own destiny. Then there is the sovereign model, best exemplified by Palmetto State Armory and their AAC, America's Ammunition Company, brand. PSA looked at the market and realized that relying on other companies for ammo was a death sentence. So, they did what Henry Ford would have done. They built their own city. They invested hundreds of millions into a vertically integrated ammunition plant that makes everything from the brass case to the projectile. They are flooding the market with AAC ammo that is priced specifically to break the backs of the legacy competitors. Because they sell directly to the consumer through their own website, they cut out the distributor and the retailer markup. This allows them to offer 77-grain OTM loads or 9mm ball ammo at prices that Vista and Olin simply cannot match without destroying their margins. This is the Amazon effect hitting the gun industry. The old guard, with their heavy overhead and reliance on big-box retail chains, is being outmaneuvered by agile, direct-to-consumer manufacturing. We also cannot ignore the Turkish elephant in the room. In the last 3 years, the importation of Turkish ammunition has exploded. Brands like ZQI, BPS, and Sterling have flooded the market with NATO-spec ammunition. While the quality can be variable, we have all seen the forum posts about hard primers or dirty powder. The economic impact is undeniable. Turkey has a massive defense industry that is heavily subsidized by their government. They can produce 9mm and 5.56 at a cost basis that is a fraction of what it costs to make in Minnesota or Illinois. When American families are struggling with inflation, price is the only metric that matters. If a box of Turkish 9mm is $2 cheaper than a box of Federal, the Turkish box goes in the cart. This race to the bottom on pricing is forcing American manufacturers to slash their margins to dangerous levels just to compete for shelf space. It is a war of attrition, and right now, the imports are winning. So, what is the forensic conclusion of this industry-wide autopsy? We are witnessing the death of the legacy model of American ammunition. The era where 3 big companies, Remington, Winchester, Federal, controlled the market and dictated prices is over. It has been replaced by a chaotic, fragmented landscape defined by foreign ownership, government dependency, and aggressive upstarts. For the consumer, this presents a paradox. In the short term, it looks like a victory. The oversupply caused by the crash, combined with the flood of imports and the aggressive pricing of the disruptors, means that ammo is cheaper and more available than it has been in years. The rebate wars are in full swing. You can get cash back on almost every caliber because these companies are desperate to clear their warehouses and convert that inventory into cash. But the long-term prognosis is far more concerning. The consolidation of major American brands under the Czechoslovak Group means that a significant portion of our Second Amendment supply chain is now subject to the geopolitical interests of the European Union. While the Czech Republic is currently gun-friendly, what happens if EU regulations on lead usage change? What happens if a future administration in Washington decides to sanction imports or revoke the licenses of foreign-owned defense companies? We have surrendered our sovereignty for a cash buyout. Similarly, Winchester's pivot to the military means that the civilian market is now a secondary concern for them. If the balloon goes up in the Pacific or Eastern Europe, Lake City will go dark for civilians overnight. The buffer that used to exist, the surplus capacity of the commercial market, is being eroded. Furthermore, the hollowing out of the domestic industry means we are losing institutional knowledge. When factories close or are consolidated, the old masters of ballistics, the guys who knew how to tweak the machines to get that perfect match-grade consistency, are retired or let go. We are seeing a rise in quality control issues across the board as companies try to cut costs. Recalls are becoming more frequent. Squib loads, setback bullets, and bad primers are showing up in factory boxes from brands that used to be impeccable. This is the cost of efficiency. This is the cost of survival. As a consumer and a citizen, how do you navigate this collapsing landscape? You have to stop being a brand loyalist and start being a logistics manager. The days of, I only shoot green box are over. You need to diversify your supply chain just like these companies are diversifying theirs. You need to identify which brands are actually manufacturing their own product and which ones are just slapping a label on a white box from overseas. Understanding the head stamp is now a survival skill. You need to know that AAC means domestic vertical integration. You need to know that Fiocchi USA means Arkansas made with global backing. You need to know that the Winchester box might be from Lake City, or it might be from a commercial line that is being deprioritized. My strategy at the counter is simple. I buy based on the sovereignty of the round. I keep a baseline of American-made, vertically integrated ammunition, stuff from companies that control their own primers and brass. This is my strategic reserve. Then I use the cheap imports and the rebate-heavy big-box ammo for training. I am exploiting the weakness of the market to build my own strength. When I see a rebate from the Kinetic Group that drops the price per round below replacement cost, I buy it. I am helping them clear their inventory, sure, but I am also insulating myself against the next price spike. Because make no mistake, the spike is coming. The current low prices are unsustainable. Companies cannot lose money forever. Eventually, production will be cut, factories will be shuttered, or a new geopolitical crisis will ignite the panic all over again. And when that happens, the industry will be leaner, smaller, and less capable of ramping up than it was in 2020.